Hello, and welcome to the Candidates Forum for McFarland School Board. My name is Laura Stoller, and I will be your moderator for today. I'm an 11-year resident of McFarland and a teacher in a nearby district. I'm happy to help and be part of the McFarland Forum this year. The candidates running for the 2 vacant seats on the school board are Bruce Fisher, Scott Gleddy-Sion, and Kate Green. The top 2 vote earners in the election will have a place on the school board. This forum provides an opportunity for candidates to further their campaign, answer audience questions, as well as help citizens make their choices for the spring election. The election this year will be on Tuesday, April 6th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the McFarland Municipal Center. Due to the outbreak of coronavirus, citizens may choose to vote absentee in person or by mail. By-mail ballots will begin March 18th, and requests for mail ballots can be made through Thursday, April 1st at 5 p.m. They must be returned by election night at 8 p.m. If you would like to vote absentee in person, you may do so between Tuesday, March 30th and Friday, April 2nd, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and until 5 p.m. on April 2nd. More information on how one may vote absentee can be found on myvote.wi.gov, or one may call the McFarland administrative offices. Today's forum will consist of a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, 8 questions, followed by a 3-minute closing statement from each candidate. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to answer each question. We will rotate who answers each question first, as well as change directions so that candidates do not answer questions after the same person each time. Additionally, before wrapping up with closing statements, we will consider questions submitted online via the Candidate Questions Forum provided by the McFarland Communications and Technology Department as time permits. We have several questions that were previously submitted by the public, and you may continue to submit questions during the forum. The questions you submit should be issue-based and will be reviewed before asking the candidates. We will not accept questions that may be targeted toward one candidate, are partisan, vulgar, inappropriate, etc. To be respectful of everyone's time, we will cap this forum at a maximum of 1.5 hours if needed. We will now begin opening statements in the order of how the candidates are listed on the ballot. So Bruce, that means you're up first with your opening statement.
I'm Bruce Fisher, and I'd like to thank the McFarland Federation of Teachers for putting on this candidate forum. I also want to thank the Herald Independent and the McFarland Thistle for their coverage of local news. This race is all about our children. They and our schools are our future. The most important issue facing us is to keep our schools open safely. Safe for students, staff, teachers. The social and emotional benefits of in-class school are crucial for many students, and in-class learning is best for most kids. However, we should not rush to open the schools completely until all teachers and staff are vaccinated and until all students feel safe to return. I'm running for the school board because I will bring to the board a perspective that reflects my 40 years of working directly with students. It is a voice that is missing and one that is sorely needed. For 37 years, I taught social studies here in McFarland. I love my job, my students, and this community. My wife and I moved here in 1986, and like so many people in this community, we moved here because of the schools. This community has always been centered around our schools. However, I've become increasingly concerned about the turnover rate of teachers. Teaching is really an art, and I believe it takes years to craft and hone this skill. I'm also concerned with the morale of teachers. Schools are not running optimally when teachers don't feel supported in their jobs. It is that interaction between teachers and students where learning takes place. In my 40 years as an educator, I was always amazed by how creative teachers can be in their classrooms. Rather than tell teachers how you want things done, instead tell them what you'd like to see them achieve and let them creatively and collaboratively figure out how to do it. My last priority is to strengthen and improve the partnership between our school district and the village. In this time of limited economic resources, the district has many facilities and services that we need to make available to the public. At the same time, the district needs to encourage residents to volunteer as mentors and tutors in our schools. We need to close the educational gap and the inequities between the haves and the have-nots if we want this community to reach its full potential.
Thank you, Bruce. And now, Scott, we're going to go to you for your opening statement.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. And so I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself, kind of introducing myself to anyone who doesn't know me. I actually grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and I have a degree in political science and philosophy from Illinois State University. My wife and I moved to the Madison area in 1999, and then we moved to McFarland in 2009. And the reason that we moved here is largely so that our two kids could grow up attending the exceptional schools that we have in our community, which they do. Professionally, I've been working in information technology for almost 25 years now. I started out as a bench tech, moved on up through the ranks. I'm currently the IT director for the UW-Madison Department of Pediatrics. And my team of 7 technologists supports about 550 faculty, staff, and administration. But the reason that I'm here and the reason that I decided to run was largely motivated by really one issue. Like a lot of parents and teachers in our district, I had deep concerns with the current school board's vote to return to in-person schooling. And I felt that the decision-making process was flawed and that there was a rush that didn't necessarily need to be there. Now, along with that, I think that it's incredibly important that whoever is on the school board is going to have a lot of work to do to restore trust and reestablish relationships with our teachers. Our teachers really are, if the schools are the lifeblood of McFarland, the teachers really are the lifeblood of our schools. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a group of people who take more pride in their job or feel a greater connection to it than teachers. And I think that the reason that I received an endorsement from the South Central Federation of Labor AFL-CIO is because they know that I'm a credible person who has deep concerns about teachers that can reestablish those relationships to make the McFarland schools a better place for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And now, Kate, to you for your opening statement.
Hello, my name is Kate Green. I'd like to start today by thanking you, the Village of McFarland, the McFarland Federation of Teachers, as well as both Bruce and Scott, and all of you who have helped to put this forum together. A little bit about myself. I was raised in McFarland and am a 1999 graduate of McFarland High School. Bruce Fisher was in fact my high school history teacher. I attended the UW of Milwaukee and received a degree in finance, and then attended UW Whitewater obtaining an MBA, all while working in investment securities. From there, I changed course and decided to pursue a degree in nursing and eventually a Master of Science in Nursing. I married another McFarland High School graduate, Eric Green, and we embarked on an exciting journey over the next 15 years that would take us all over both the United States and Germany with the United States Air Force. My experiences both in areas of the US as well as overseas has taught me a lot about community, family, and education. My husband and I decided to move back to this community about 2 years ago, primarily because of how wonderful it is. We have 3 children who attend school here at WIS, IMMS, and MHS. In moving back, we wanted our kids to have the kind of small town feel and opportunities that we had growing up. I work as a pediatric nurse practitioner with Unity Point Health Meriter in the primary care setting. Before moving back to Wisconsin, I had the opportunity to work in an underserved area of San Antonio, helping minority children and providing medical education to their families. Working with a population that lacked basic necessities, access to healthcare, and opportunities in education inspired me to become more involved in the community. I love working with children and families and couldn't imagine doing anything else. I decided to run for school board because I felt that I could bring a different perspective. Having parent representation is something that continues to be a need for our board. My medical background, along with having the multiple children in the district, could be a strong asset if elected.
Thank you, Kate. So now we're going to get into the question portion. And the first question is this: What is a school board member's role and responsibility? And how does that role different from the role of the superintendent or administration? And we're going to start this question with Kate.
So I think that this really in this election, the first and foremost important issue that's really been brought about in the last year is our children, and making decisions that benefit the children, of course, but also respect the feelings of the teachers. So there's been a lot of division lately about whether it's safe to return to school, how we should pursue education with kids right now, virtually or in person. And I think that it's important to take all accounts when we're on the school board. So we need to listen to our teachers, we need to listen to our administration, and we need to listen to the community. Our decision-making has to show that we're hearing everybody, we're taking in all facts, and working with the superintendent and the administration to benefit everyone involved, without making people feel that they're not heard and they're not respected. Everyone has a voice, and we need to show that.
Thank you, Kate. Scott, the same question to you.
Sure. So fundamentally, I think that really at the core of this question is the difference between those two roles is that really the job of a school board member is really to, at the highest level, set policy, like essentially make the decisions about the direction of the school district as a whole. And the job of the administrator, there's certainly going to be collaboration in that. But fundamentally, the job of the administrators is to implement that policy. Now, in order to do that well, I think it's very important that the school board has to consider, as part of their job, drawing in knowledge, expertise, and the concerns of, and addressing the concerns of stakeholders at all levels. And I think that what they should do in order to do their job the best that they can, they need to make sure that they're not allowing themselves to concentrate too much on any one group of stakeholders or focus too much on one area, and really try to set the best policy that they can for the district as a whole, and make sure that they take this step back and find the information that they need in order to do that. The administrators are going to be able to offer a great deal of information that the school board will find indispensable. But fundamentally, the decision really does come down to the school board. And that's a really heavy burden that the school board has to take on. And even with all of the difficult questions that we've faced, I think it's important to recognize that when we disagree with I'm going to be probably talking about a number of ways in which I've disagreed with the current school board. It's important to acknowledge that we're all trying to do the right thing here. But ultimately, the buck does stop with them. And I think that that's really what we have to accept coming into this. It's our job to make that decision.
Thank you, Scott. And Bruce, same question to you.
I think it's already been said that, in a sense, the school board, not in a sense, we actually set the policy. Luckily, there's 5 of us, or unluckily, I don't think you're going to have any one member actually been able to run anything through without having some collaboration between the other members. And I do agree with what both members said, that we need to be listening to all voices. We need to make them feel like we are there to represent all the views. And at the same time, we need to work and collaborate with the administrators as well, because they're going to be the ones carrying out this policy. I think more than anything, I'm hoping that my background of 40 years as an educator is going to give me a lot of ideas. I know I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to throw out there. And I kind of think of myself as kind of a catalyst for change. I really do agree with what Scott says. It's a very, it's almost, it's a very, I don't say very serious, but we have a big job, and we have an enormous responsibility, I guess is the best way to put it down, to try to steer this school board and this district, excuse me, in the direction we want it to go, so that we can maximize the education for all citizens in McFarland. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, the next question. Conflict and differences of opinion are an inevitable part of any organization. How do you envision effective communication and problem solving among all the school district stakeholders, students, educators, administration, and school board? For this question, we're going to start with Scott.
Sure, thanks. So in my current role as the IT director for the Department of Pediatrics, I mean, this is not something that is unknown to me, needless to say. I mean, anybody in any kind of a management or supervisory role is going to have to deal with this. And it's the least enjoyable part of any job. But the way to make it to make the best of a bad situation is to, first of all, make sure that everyone at the table is accorded full respect, that they are fully allowed to express their opinions, and that they know that you are, and to establish credibility so that they know that you're not on anyone's side in particular, that you're really trying to do what's best for the school. And I think that that has to be the basis of it. Now, beyond that, there are, you want to make sure that you treat everyone fairly. You want to make sure that you don't mischaracterize the positions of anyone, that you aren't dismissing anyone. I mean, the biggest thing about all of this is that really everyone has legitimate concerns here. No one, we too often get stuck in a trap of assuming bad motives on someone's part. That's just not the case. And I think that mutual respect and establishing that is just the very most important thing, because that's the way that you can get to a point where everyone can be honest, that everyone can feel comfortable airing their concerns. And that is the only way to reach the best solution.
Thank you. Kate, same question to you.
So I think what Scott said was actually absolutely correct. We get caught up in thinking that when people disagree, there is bad intent with that. And I think that's part of every school board, right? Is that you bring a lot of different ideas to the table, you voice differing opinions, but you have a mutual respect for each other. As far as communication and problem solving among school district stakeholders, I think as a board, our role needs to be to ensure that we're talking to all of these people. We're meeting with these groups individually, seeing what's working, seeing what's not, so that when we meet and make decisions, we're bringing all voices to the table. And that's something that I think sometimes gets missed by many school boards, is that they don't bring all of the voices to the table, and sometimes they let their individual emotions factor into their decision making. And if elected into the school board, I think that one of the important roles that you take is you're not only speaking for yourself, but you're speaking for the community, for the teachers, for the students. And that's something we can't forget. So ensuring that we have a finger on the pulse, so to say, knowing what's going on in the district, knowing the problems, knowing what's working, are things really that we need to be doing constantly as check-ins, so that when we do make these decisions, we're able to voice more facts and more understanding from the whole district stakeholder viewpoint.
Thank you, Kate. And Bruce, to you, same question.
Yeah, I think, again, I'd reiterate what my opponents have just said. I think they're wonderful. I mean, the truth of the matter is, we all have what we're hoping to do, what's in the best interest of the kids and the schools. And I mean, we just have to sometimes stop and think that maybe less aggressive or kind of in-your-face tactics. And I like to call it, I think we need more nudging than we need really just confrontational approach. I think we sometimes forget just the golden rule, which is just treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think, again, what Kate was just saying, that we represent everyone there, even if we don't necessarily hold the same views. And somehow we need to try to communicate that to the public and to the people who may be even support of some of the things that we are in favor of, but there's others against. We got to try to tell them why we're doing it. I think that's really important thing to do. So thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is about the strengths of our district. What are 2 or 3 strengths of which our district can be proud, and why do you see these as strengths? This time we're going to start with Bruce.
Well, McFarland has always kind of identified itself with its schools. It's always been that way. In fact, I'm on the Plan Commission, and when we had we were looking at the report that we're planning out for 10 years. There's a lot of people who have a hard time differentiating between the two. Many people move here. In fact, so many people do move here because of that. So I think that's really good. I think there's times that we could be a little more harmonious in our school, but I think that is a strength. And I think, in fact, it's important that we realize that schools are the future for our society. The other things that I would see is a possible strength in the future, in fact, I'm hoping it's going to be really big, is that we start collaborating more with the school and the village, and we start doing things together. We have facilities and resources and services that we're kind of, at this point, replicating. Each is in their own little silo, and I'd like to see us kind of work that way. And I think that could become a strength because, again, we don't really have anything that really else unites us other than the schools itself. Beyond that, it's a wonderful community. I don't know. So I'm trying to think of the strengths, just the friendly nature of this district, the fact that we're so blessed to be near Madison and the university. I think we have a very well-educated populace. And I think as a result, we're going to have naturally probably some very good schools. I think it's important, though, we also focus on those kids who don't have the support system or don't have the economic wherewithal to necessarily be as successful as they would. And that's why I'd really like to start working on having mentors and tutors coming in to try to work with those kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Scott, what would you like to tell us about the strengths of the district? Oh, you're muted, Scott.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the biggest things that I would say is, number one, really community involvement and community investment. I mean, I think if you were going to point to the reason that some of the difficult times that we go through, that the parents are so vehement, that is because they really do care that much. We really, as a community, we take a tremendous amount of pride in the schools. They really are. I mean, they're the reason my family is here. They're the reason a lot of families are here. And that deep investment is something that it drives us all to try as best we can to make the schools better, to get involved in a lot of different ways, to encourage our kids to get involved in a lot of different ways. And the second thing that I would point to is really the teachers, the quality of the teachers. I mean, we have just some of the best teachers that I can imagine. I mean, and anybody that's come up through the schools knows this, that they're incredibly caring, they're incredibly skilled. And it's not just a matter of imparting information, it's a matter of making our kids better people and really helping them grow. And I think that these are the things that, you know, properly channeled, these things can work together, that the investment on the part of the community and the parents can really make McFarland an incredibly attractive place for teachers to come and, you know, hopefully work for good teachers to work their entire careers here. And I think it's a really wonderful thing to see when it goes that way. And I think it's something that we should build on what we've got and aim at in the future.
Thank you. Kate, to you, same question.
So I have to echo a lot of what Bruce and Scott have said. I mean, I think that our school district is the reason a lot of people move here. We have an excellent reputation with this school district. And the school brings so much to the community. I think this community takes an active role in participation in the schools. Our parents, you know, and guardians provide a lot of volunteer hours and involvement in the community in these schools. And I think that staff commitment and student achievement and excellence really within the schools speak for themselves. So we have a lot of strengths. I think we all know why we live here, and we all know why this is a sought after location and school district. Sometimes I think we need to focus on these strengths a little bit more when the lines get blurry and there's a lot of emotions, to just remember why we're here and why this community is so great.
Thank you, Kate. Our next question is about balancing the needs of stakeholders. How do you intend to balance the needs of all the stakeholders in the McFarland community? And Kate, we're going to start with you this time.
So I think this is a difficult question in some ways, only because I think that the needs of the stakeholders are very different depending on who you're talking about. But I want to reiterate that we're all here for the children, right? We're here because we want to educate our children and we want to provide a great experience for our youth so that as they grow into adults, we feel that they've gotten all that they need. So I think the focus always needs to be about the children. But in order to get that great education that we're talking about, you need to focus on the teachers and you need to focus on their needs and what makes them happy, what makes them feel fulfilled in their jobs. And really what we need to do to build morale within the school district and within the educator's role here in order to provide a better learning environment for our children. Additionally, the community in general, really we need to capture kind of what the needs of the community are. Not everybody has students here in the district, but they still have opinions about the things that work within this community, the things that work within this district, and how they feel they can contribute to the school district, even if they're not part of the district with their own children. The administration is really the balance between the school board and I think the teachers. You know, I feel like they're the ones that kind of need to go back and forth between the school board and the teachers and kind of discuss what works, what doesn't, why things are important and why they're not. So I would look to the administration and the superintendent specifically to help balance all of the needs of the community here in McFarland.
Thank you, Kate. Bruce, we're going to go to you next.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. This is something I just think is going to change in public schools. As we have an aging population, there's a number of people sit there and go like, well, why are we paying for this? Forgetting, of course, the fact that there were people who were older paying for them while they were going to schools. But I do think there's things we can offer. I had a wonderful experience. I taught for a year in Scotland, and I was able to visit a school. It was in a small community outside of Edinburgh, and it was a community school. And what that meant was their library, and rather than replicate services, they had a library for the high school, but it was also the community library. And so they opened up their school to the greater public. And when gym classes weren't being used, there were seniors using it. Now, I don't think we're going to go quite that far, but there are an awful lot of things that we can be doing. And we need to be telling those people who don't have children that some of these services and facilities really should be open to the whole public. And it's something that I think we haven't done. And I just think we need to do a better job. And we need to really start redesigning what public schools are all about. I think that will address part of it. I also think we need to do things, we're going to have a shortage of teachers. And I think we need to be starting like offering classes for kids who might be interested in teaching classes, becoming a teacher, I should say, and have them actually working as mentors and tutors with young kids at various grades. I think that would be good. And I think, again, the more we can get the community involved and the schools involved with the greater community, I think the greater you have a chance of actually starting to have that dialogue that's necessary to really make this place a great school district.
Thank you, Bruce. Scott, How are you going to balance the needs of the stakeholders?
So, as a lot of people in McFarland are aware, I served one term on the village board a few years ago, 2013 to 2015. And one of the things that became clear on the village board is that in many cases, you have to actively seek out input from stakeholders that you might not necessarily get if you're more passive and let input come to you. The fact is, as involved as many of us are, you can't expect absolutely everyone to be able to get their words to you every time. You have to go and find that. And sometimes that may be stakeholders directly within the school administration, anyone from administration to teachers. Sometimes it may be citizens that might have strong opinions about something, but don't have the time through work or other commitments to make it to school board meetings. That's work that the board has to do. In order to encourage additional stakeholder input, also, you have to make it clear that you want to hear from people who you don't maybe necessarily agree with. What you're trying to do, that your voice, you need to make it clear that your mind can be changed. You have to be willing to advocate for other voices. You really have to make it clear that the process you're going through is an open one, where you really do want to hear from everyone. Now, all that said, in the end, there will be, one of the things that goes with a responsibility like this is understanding and accepting that you won't be able to make everyone happy. But that's not necessarily what people want every time. It's not that they want you to do what they say. It's that they want to feel that their voice is heard, that they are respected, and that their input is taken into consideration, and that we're all driving at the same goal, which is educating our kids to the best degree that we can.
Thank you. We're going to talk a little bit now about your previous involvement. How have you already been engaged in the school district or community in terms of activities or organizations? And for this question, we're going to start with Scott.
So I mean, as far as my involvement in the community, just starting broadly, like I said, I was on the village board. In addition to actually serving on the village board, I served on a number of village communities, both before, during, and after my direct involvement on the board. And that includes Communications and Technology Committee, the Community Development Authority, and the Library Board. My family generally has been pretty active in McFarland. A lot of people know my wife, Katie, who founded the McFarland Community Garden and is still deeply involved with that. And, I'm not going to take any credit for that, but it's certainly been a boon to the community. And it's, our entire family feels very strongly that this is important. We've been very involved in McFarland Sparks 4-H. We've been involved in the parent-teacher organization. And generally speaking, we've done absolutely everything we can to really be a part of this community and contribute however we're able to do so. And, I think that this is something that's, of tremendous importance for the community, the good of the community as a whole, that we get more and more voices as best we can.
Thank you, Scott. Bruce, let's hear from you.
Well, it's kind of a weird question because I spent most of my adult life working at the high school and the middle school. So I taught everything from 7th grade civics to senior elective classes. But in some ways, I'm really kind of proud of some of the crazy things I tried. When I was teaching 8th grade US history, I was willing to give up my free period and actually work with a biology teacher, a guy named Daryl Rupp now, who was a very passionate, he had a class called environmental science, and it was something that I was very interested in my undergraduate degree from Syracuse. And together we team taught. It had never been done before. And I just said, I'm willing to do it without really getting paid. I gave up my prep period to do that. And for a number of years, we team taught that together. I was really happy to just try different courses. I taught Russian history, which became a passion. of mine. And in fact, I'm still teaching it to adults. And something, again, I'd really like to see us start doing a better job of opening classes up for people who are no longer or retired or are just interested in taking classes. My last year, I was teaching half-time at McFarland, and I was really proud that Andrew Riddell was willing to give me an opportunity to actually sit in and audit music theory. And I actually sat in and took that with the students. And I thought it was, first for me, it was fantastic. It just opened a whole new world. But at the same time, I realized there are people in this community who'd be really interested in taking these classes. And it really did a wonderful job of just kind of opening the eyes of the students to see an adult in there who wasn't afraid to ask questions, the dumb questions, because I'm beyond that point. And I think there's things we can do that we need to really look at.
Thank you, Bruce. Kate, what would you like to share with us?
Well, this is a little bit of a difficult question for me because I've only lived here about 1.5 years. So I haven't had the opportunity to really become very engaged yet in the community. This is my first real attempt at engaging in the community on the school board. I will say that my husband does sit on the planning commission. Eric actively took that role when we got back to McFarland. And really with 3 children, I am pretty busy with engaging in sporting events right now. So my husband and I are pretty involved in the McFarland soccer organization along with the swim team. Growing up here in McFarland, I was a big swimmer and I was a coach for the McFarland Spartan Sharks. Obviously, I've moved on from that role, but coming back into the community, I'm definitely starting to get more involved in the organizational sports that McFarland has to offer.
Thank you, Kate. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about how to recruit and retain the best employees. As a school board member, you are responsible for developing policies and working conditions for all staff and students. Students, staff, and community benefit from consistent education provided by quality educators. The turnover in educators and staff has been high in McFarland and nationwide recently. What are important policies that should be in place to recruit and retain highly qualified employees? And we're going to start with Bruce.
We alluded a little bit, I think it was Kate, about administration. And I really think administrators have probably about the most difficult job. I think more than anything, administrators need to listen. They need to listen. They need to be willing to hear, again, you talk about the various stakeholders, but teachers, but as well as parents. And I think they have to be careful to not let their ego get in the way and start saying, this is the way we want to try to, we're going to do things. I think it's really, really important that, again, we set goals, we have objectives. I used to do that as a teacher and as a track coach all the time. This is what I want to do. And I just kind of left it up to my coaching staff to do that. But even in my classroom, when we were working on projects, I tried not to give too much guidance in a sense. I wanted them to come up with things on their own. And I think that is probably more than anything what teachers want. No teacher got into this business to make a lot of money. They went in because they really thought they could help kids, and they love kids. There is something that is incredibly just magical about watching a kid when they really understand and get something. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's so awesome. So more than anything, if you give teachers that freedom to be willing to experiment, to try, kind of like with that environmental science or with the idea of auditing a music theory class, I think what happens is the teacher feels empowered. And when they do, you're going to just have this incredible energy that is taking place in that classroom. And I guess really that's the biggest thing. I want administrators to try to, again, avoid making hard, tough decisions that box teachers in and let teachers figure it out themselves or working collaboratively with their colleagues. And I think when you do that, the kids are going to be the ones who really benefit.
Thanks, Bruce. Kate, to you, same question. What are the important policies that should be in place to recruit and retain highly qualified employees?
So there's no doubt that the key to providing an excellent education begins with the teachers. To recruit and retain qualified educators and staff, I think compensation is the most important part. My understanding from talking to teachers in the district is that salaries in McFarland continue to be lower than other districts in the area. I think creating a competitive, well-rounded compensation package with good benefits, salary, and continuing education is really important in recruitment and retention. Providing updated facilities, technology, and other classroom resources requested by educators to facilitate the delivery of their education is another priority. I think that providing funds as we can would be important in accommodating continuing education days during the academic year to help support the staff growth. Supporting teachers and providing an outstanding leadership team to listen and address concerns is what I feel is probably key to this problem. And I want to make sure that educators and staff feel respected and valued by their peers and administration. Because at the end of the day, if we want our kids to have a good learning environment and thrive in that learning environment, we need to make sure that our teachers have the resources and the morale that they need to be successful.
Thanks, Kate. Scott, what would you do to recruit and retain highly effective employees?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we've got to acknowledge is that one of the biggest problems that a lot of teachers have faced, and one of the reasons that some of them are anything from feeling less loyalty to districts to in fact leaving the profession, is because they feel demonized by a lot of people. And this is something that we have to take every step that we possibly can to make sure that we never allow it to become a problem in McFarland. Teachers are never the enemy. Their unions are not the enemy. Teachers' unions are advocating on behalf of the teachers. They're doing their job. Teachers want to educate our kids. And we need to make sure that we're looking at them, the teachers and their unions, as partners and not opponents at any point. And we need to make that clear to them. And we need them to feel that it's an active partnership. Now, I absolutely, when Bruce said that nobody gets into the profession for the money, I mean, first of all, obviously he would know. And, you know, he's absolutely right. Now, that said, there's also, I think, no question that competitive salaries are going to be an important part of retaining teachers and attracting more teachers. We want to make ourselves an attractive destination. And, you know, the simple fact is we can't do that without competitive salaries. And so that's something that we always need to bear in mind. And we need to make sure that our salaries are competitive. And beyond that, I would say that we always need to make the teachers clear make it clear that input from teachers is incredibly important to the school board. The part of being a partnership is hearing them and incorporating their input. And they should never be feeling like they've just been shunted aside in any case. And it's incumbent upon the school board to make it clear to them that that partnership is incredibly important to us. It's foundational to the well-being of the schools.
Thank you, Scott. What considerations should be made to provide an equitable education for students in our district? This time we're going to start with Kate.
So let me start by saying that I'm so impressed coming back to this community at the strides that the school district specifically and McFarland has made with diversity and equity. I know we just got a grant, which I think is so important in incorporating into our public school system. Education is key to that. And that's not just educating staff, but educating students on diversity, inclusion, and equity. I think there's always room to grow. We have learned so much in the last 5 to 10 years about equity and inclusion, and not only in race, but really with socioeconomic status, you know, transgender children, and just ensuring that everyone in the district feels like they're appreciated and not left behind. I think it's really important for our school district to kind of capture some data about who's coming in, who's falling behind, what we can do to help ensure that we're essentially leveling the playing field for these students and allowing them to not feel that because of either their race or their socioeconomic status, they are any less important than anyone else in our district.
Thank you, Kate. Scott, same question to you.
So in one of my earlier questions, one of the things that I talked about is the need to seek out stakeholders. And while I think it's absolutely true that we've made strides, I think we've got a lot of work to do still. And I think that this is going to require McFarland, the school board, and the district to actively seek out stakeholders in this area. And that includes issues of affected by socioeconomic disparities, that it includes issues of racial justice. And we need to not only seek out additional voices, but we need to make sure that everyone knows that that is a priority for us. That, you know, one of the things that I've talked about at times over the past couple of months is that we have a lot of people in this district who are just incredible activists, just really incredibly impressive young people. We should be building on the relationship that we have with some of the people that are already here in the district and asking them for how we can make it better. And the only way that we're going to do that is if we acknowledge that we've had failures in the past, but also demonstrate a complete commitment to getting better in the future.
Thank you. Bruce, to you.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Scott said. It's pretty amazing how this community has worked together. And in some ways, they're already heading towards that kind of collaborative, that relationship I'm talking about, of having a community and a school, where like the school is for the community is for the school. This whole McFarland Equity Project is just, it's really something we should be incredibly proud of. And again, some of the young people who have kind of spearheaded this whole thing. Right off the bat, I immediately think, again, it's one of the reasons, and I've talked with a lot of people who are, again, retired like myself, and who would be willing to go back and act as mentors and tutors. We need to get them involved. This problem's been there. It's just that it suddenly become very much more noticeable during this pandemic, and the pandemic has only exacerbated it. But the truth of the matter is, when we really do get back to normal, we're going to have these people coming in there. And it's going to require a change on the part of the administration. They're going to have to welcome them, and teachers as well. I mean, I don't think we can force a teacher to have these in there. But I think it's really important that we start with that. One very simple thing is, I think it's really important that all members of the school board have to take, or should take, it's like implicit or unconscious bias training. I think it's important, it behooves us that we do all the reading we can about this issue. And again, the way we're challenging some of our most basic and core beliefs on this. So I think there's a lot we can do. I think we've already done a lot, something we're proud of. And let's just continue the pull together as a community and work towards this.
Thank you. We are certainly all well aware that the last year has been unusual and chaotic. So coming out of the pandemic, what would be a reasonable plan to address the needs of students who have been the most significantly impacted? And for this question, we're going to start with Scott.
So there's going to be a couple of different forms that some of this impact is going to take. We've had a fair number of kids who have gotten COVID, and some of them are going to have long-term medical conditions, you know, what's referred to as COVID long haulers. We need to make sure that our teachers and administrators are aware that this is a problem. And this is not just a problem in McFarland, obviously. This is a problem everywhere in the world. But it's something that we need to make sure that we're aware that this is an issue and that's going to be ongoing, and there may not be an easy answer for a lot of kids. And we need to absolutely be willing to work with them on that. One of the big issues that has come out of this has been grave mental health concerns. I mean, for everybody, but especially for kids who have had difficulties with virtual learning. And there's going to be a significant adjustment period that it's not going to be easy for anyone. I mean, I think just, speaking a little bit like kind of more colloquially, a lot of us have said we don't know how to socialize anymore. When we get together with people, it's just been so difficult for everyone, and school is just going to be that much more difficult. Now, that said, I think that absolutely everybody, regardless of what you think the schedule should be for returning to in-person, everybody wants to get there. And I think that understanding that that we're going to have problems that we simply have not faced in the past, and being willing to work with kids and being willing to make accommodations for kids who are affected by these things and teachers as well, is going to be paramount.
Thank you. Kate, to you.
So obviously this year, working in the healthcare field, I can say that I have lived this every day. And working in the pediatric field, I would question even how to quantify who's been most significantly impacted. I think that some kids have thrived in this environment, and others have clearly not thrived. There's a few factors that I think we're going to need to address as we start having students return in a more full-time manner to the classroom. The biggest one being mental health. The past year has been more difficult than I could ever imagine, taking care of pediatric children. We've had kids coming in ages 7 and 8 having mental health issues. So identifying kind of what those causes were has really led us to understand the emotional and social needs of this population that maybe we didn't fully understand before. Reintroducing them kind of into school, into social settings is going to be very important. And that doesn't apply just to, young school age children. It applies to teenagers as well. And I think another thing that we need to address here, and this again is in no poor reflection to the teachers, but just the learning gap over the last year. How do we meet children where they're at? How do we bring them into school in the next, 3 months, 6 months, and meet all of these children the same age that may have very different gaps in their education, more so than when they were in school full-time and the teachers were able to see that. So I think we need to really think about that and how to address that.
Thanks, Kate. Bruce, to you.
Wow, this is such an important question. Yeah, without doubt, there's some kids who have really suffered, and teachers as well. And then as Kate alludes, ironically, there's people who have actually thrived. I think one thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to start, maybe we're gonna be following some kind of a hybrid model for quite a while. But one of the things that I think we really have to do in this district is I do know that we're gonna have to probably hire more mental health specialists and have them available. I just think that's something that it's just gonna be something we have to do. I would agree with also the idea it's gonna be hard sometimes to identify, who has the problem or sometimes how bad they have it. So I'm not sure we can necessarily identify who's most affected and who most needs the help. But again, I think that's where hopefully teachers can act as that kind of first rung of that communication with the kids. And when they start to see problems or identify them, they get these kids in touch with professionals. I think, again, it will come back slowly. I don't think we're going to be completely out of the woods with this pandemic. So I think there's going to be these little kind of blips and, periods where things are going to be a little bit more worse than it was. And I think we're going to have to just be very, very flexible on how we handle this whole thing. I think flexibility is going to be key to the whole thing. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to now move into the publicly submitted questions that people submitted online via the Village of McFarland website. We have tried to combine similar questions to avoid repetition. So the first question is about everybody's favorite topic, money. As a board member, how would you determine your budget priorities and determine where to make changes? And for this question, we're going to start with Bruce.
Wow. Well, I think it's going to be, there's something, a couple of my two opponents were talking about teacher wages. Yeah, and I was very aware that McFarland is pretty low on that. So it's going to be difficult to do that. I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find some source of revenue that can actually help the school district. So one thing I would right off the bat is I would hope that we can start as this pandemic goes further in the rearview mirror, we can open up our auditorium. We can open up our weight room. As I said, I think we could even be charging a slight fee for auditing classes. I think there's things that we're going to have to do differently than we've done in the past. I just think that's the changing nature of our demographics in our society. I guess really more than anything, you're going to have to sit there and study and listen and collaborate with the other board members. And I think as Scott says, you're going to have to go out to the public and listen to what people have to say. So I think that would be my answer.
Thank you. Scott, going back to you, how would you determine your budget priorities and where to make any changes?
So absolutely, making teacher salaries competitive has got to be, I think, one of our top priorities. As I've said, I consider teachers the lifeblood of the school, and I think that we need to attract and retain the best talent that we can, and certainly salaries are going to be a part of that. And we're going to be, it's something that, again, we have to seek out the best information that we can to find out, like, if we're losing out on talent, why? Where are people going instead? And can we work that into the budget? Now, beyond that, I guess I generally tend to take an approach of like, how can we spend money in a way that's going to either plug holes that we know that we have, or improve the educational experience as best we can for as many kids as we possibly can. The fact is, you know, and I've certainly been on the other end of this, every single one of us that has kids in the district or that is a member of the community or a stakeholder in any way has individual priorities that we feel are the most important. And, you know, it's very difficult to tell people that they're wrong, because generally speaking, everybody's priorities have some importance. There's validity. But I think it's important for the school board to acknowledge that, you know, at times we're going to have to say no. And, you know, the fact is there's no free lunch. If we're going to take money from one area to go to the other, we have to acknowledge that and reach out to people. But, you know, it goes with the job, and it's something that we have to be willing to do, make the tough decisions.
Thank you, Scott. Kate, how would you determine your budget priorities and where to make changes?
So I would say that a priority, as Scott had said, is teacher retention. So evaluating compensation plans, trying to create a package that is appealing to new teachers coming into the district, and then trying to build on that and actually keep these teachers here is something that I think needs to be a priority in the district. In addition, another priority for me is the mental health piece. So of course we've got funding, but in Ever's proposed budget, we've got hopefully some more funding coming for mental health. And I think we are going to see about 2 to 3 times the amount of mental health that we've seen in previous years. So I think that continuing education for staff and students, I think trying to get more social workers, counselors, psychologists possibly into the building needs to be a priority for us as we address the traumas essentially that have occurred over the last year in this pandemic. And I think sometimes we forget that they're not always visible. So kids can act fine, and then slowly as they return to school, these behaviors come out. And I want to make sure that these teachers are ready to deal with that as these kids come back to school.
Thank you, Kate. So our next question is about arts education. Do you support arts education for all students? And how would you make this evident in policy and budget decisions? We're going to start this one with Kate.
So absolutely, I think that this needs to be a priority, and I'm sad that it seems that when there's budget cuts, the arts specifically tend to be the one that suffers. So this needs to be a priority. There's more to school and education than just sports and making that the priority. So trying to give more back to the community, give more back through the theater and music programs is going to be essential in a lot of these kids' lives. And I think that with this new beautiful auditorium we now have at McFarland High School, I think that can be used as a showcase for the great arts program that we already have here. Unfortunately, I know there's been a lot of budget constraints, but I think we need to ensure that this is a priority within the school district for a lot of these children who are really thriving because of it. In addition, just the arts in general, I think is something that a lot of people forget about when we're talking about the needs of the community. And, you know, when we talk about stakeholders, the arts are what our community, especially our retirees, really look forward to enjoying from our students. So I think that is one way that these stakeholders who maybe don't have children in the district can take advantage of what our district has to offer. And by doing that, we need to just ensure that we've got the funding to support that.
Thank you, Kate. Bruce? Do you support arts education for all students? And how would you make this evident in policy and budget decisions?
Oh yeah, I strongly do. I defy anyone to tell me what's the most important, classes that be offered. And I would defy anyone to tell me at what grade level. Is it high school? Is it elementary that have the biggest impact? Each of us have been in our own way impacted by teachers. And I remember Bill Garvey. At one point, we had nearly half of our student body in the high school involved in the band program. It was incredible. I just feel like we're going to have to. This is going to be such a difficult thing. Since Act 10, and that was at the end of my teaching career. We all foresaw this was going to happen. When you just basically neutered the unions. You were going to be really having problems with funding things. And it turns out that we have to just recognize how important these are. My father was a professor of music at Brown University, and he conducted the Brown University Orchestra, and he would bring in people from the Boston Symphony and sometimes even the New York Philharmonic to play with these students. Not only do we want to be listening, as Kate was talking about, but you know what? We can start bringing people into the school from the community, the greater community, and we can be doing more community kind of band and organizing that will benefit everybody. Lastly, this our auditorium, to me, should be a moneymaker. I mean, we should be not only just having shows from our schools, and I think we need to do that. In fact, I think we got to do more of it. But the truth is, we can be getting shows from, off-Broadway type things that would greatly benefit the whole community, the business in particular. And I think it would be, again, an eye-opener for students to actually be able to see some of these performances or these practices, to see these people actually doing their job. So we need to support the arts for sure.
Thanks, Bruce. Scott, do you support arts education for all students? And how do you make this evident in policy and budget decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I have personally talked about a fair amount over the last couple of months. And I can tell you, I guess I would basically describe my own experiences here. I played three sports in high school. Got football, basketball, and baseball. And I got a tremendous amount of of not only enjoyment but growth from those things. I actually still play baseball to this day. I work in technology, and so when we think of like the different areas of schooling and the different areas of education, STEM is, of course, incredibly important. But if I had to identify the best thing that I've ever done for myself as far as my long-term well-being, as far as education in all kinds of different areas, it was picking up the guitar and starting to sing when I was 16 years old. And certainly music is not the only form of art that kids benefit from. But I think that if we look at things like sports and STEM and arts education as in conflict, this is the wrong way to look at it. We need to look at this as these are critically important areas of different kids' entire growth as a person. That what we need is not to basically be deciding to sacrifice one or the other, but we need to actively find ways to balance the importance of these things for different kids. And arts education in particular, what's tremendous about it is how democratic it is, that anybody can do these things, that anybody can learn to play an instrument or learn to paint or learn to act or learn to do anything to participate in productions. And the joy that they get from it and the enrichment, it really does last a lifetime. And I can say that from experience. And our budgets and our priorities need to absolutely reflect that.
Thank you. So our next question is about the role of the school board and how it disrupts and dismantles systemic racism. So what is the role of a school board in disrupting and dismantling systemic racism and countering the historical and persistent inequities? So we're going to start with you, Scott. So the role of the school board in disrupting and dismantling systemic racism and countering the historical and persistent inequities.
Yeah, so this is a really difficult question, especially because, the fact is with me being who I am and my background, I'm not going to have direct experience with this. And so what's critical, and I think this is critical for the school board, and this is the biggest thing the school board has to start with, and this is where I start with as a person, is number one, acknowledging that systemic racism exists, that these historical inequities exist, and that they are a thing that we need to make it a priority to deal with. And then going out and listening and believing people that are affected by this directly, people of color, kids of color, their families, and asking them what their experiences are and what we can do to make this better. And I think that too often we find that people in organizations find themselves in a place of, if not necessarily denial, then defensiveness. The idea that, oh, we're doing the best we can, oh, things are getting better. And in some cases that may be true, but the fact is, we haven't solved this. It's something that we need absolutely, first of all and foremost, to acknowledge that there is a lot of work to be done. And some of that may be uncomfortable, and some of that may be difficult, and some of it may require commitments that are that maybe we didn't necessarily understand need to be made, but we need to be absolutely open to that. And we need to be constantly seeking out ways to improve in this area.
Thank you, Scott. Bruce, what is the role of the school board in disrupting and dismantling systemic racism and countering the historical and persistent inequities?
I think right off the bat, we have to, again, make it one of our overarching goals that we're going to try to dismantle. We're going to try to attack this problem. But I think more than anything, we're going to have to, again, empower teachers and students. I mean, when you look at what a couple of students and teachers have already done in this direction, it's impressive. And that's why I think we sometimes feel like we have to be in charge. We have to have a plan. I think we have a goal. And then I think we just say, okay, if you guys are you've got plans and you want to do things, do it. If we're finding that things are not happening or moving, then I think we have to start working, bringing in lecturers, having workshops. I think those are all important, but I think we'll find it within the school district itself, there will be teachers who are going to just run with this, and there are going to be students and parents who are going to do it as well. And I think they need our blessing probably as much as anything. So I think that would be the way I would try to tackle it. You know, the most obvious thing is we need to do a better job of trying to hire minorities. But I say that, and I know even when I was teaching, we did try to we tried to reach out as well as we could or do a better job of attracting minority candidates to become teachers in the district. And so part of it will be perhaps if we can raise salaries. I want to just mention just something a little not quite related to this, but almost as important to teachers as money is time. They need time to be able to work on, you know, creating lessons, creating clubs, grading, reporting to the students and reporting to parents. And so that's one thing that we can do. If we can make the time more accessible to teachers, and we work on the salaries, maybe we can attract more minorities.
Thank you, Bruce. Kate, what is the role in the school board in disrupting and dismantling systemic racism and countering the historical and persistent inequities?
So I think that the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge that it exists. Acknowledging it exists and acknowledging that it's here is something that especially minorities need to know. They need to know that we accept it, we know it's here, and we want to work with them to improve it. One thing I've learned primarily from my time working in a low socioeconomic area of San Antonio, Texas, was that when I went in as the primary care nurse practitioner for a group of largely Hispanic kids and their families, there was no trust there. Initially, there was absolutely no trust, and I needed to earn that trust. And when they realized that I was looking out for the greater good of them and their children, they gave me that respect and they gave me that trust. And I think that from a school board perspective, one thing that we can do is go out and talk to these families, be the voice for them if they're not comfortable being that voice, and letting them know that we care and we want to help to make sure that their viewpoints, their concerns are shared with the community and shared with the schools. I think if they feel that the board specifically supports them, there in itself will allow for a lot more ideas, a lot more interactions to occur between us, the administration, the teachers, and the students.
Thank you, Kate. What should our school district do to prepare students to be global citizens? Bruce, we're going to start with you.
I think it's just something, unfortunately, I felt like we really kind of dropped the ball on it for a number of years. I think what we were doing even in the 90s and around the year 2000, we kind of taken a step backwards. I just think it's mandatory, or we've got to make it really critical, I guess, that young kids, starting at the youngest grades, take more biology, but also ecology. They'll understand the interconnectedness between all living things on this planet. So I think that's just something we need to do. And I think, again, I'm hoping that we can get students. In fact, Scott, I'm really proud of your daughter for getting involved on this sustainability committee. We need to have more students actually actively working on clubs and actually, in some ways, they could help the village tremendously by collecting data for like water sampling. We were doing that in that environmental studies class many, many years ago, and it's all been kind of come to an end. But I think the more we get kids to understand the interrelatedness of things, from a social studies teacher's point of view, I tried to always have the kids understand the concept of the tragedy of the commons, how my little bit probably won't seem to make much difference because it's just such a small amount. But when you start thinking about the collective little bit, we end up having a huge degradation problem with our environment. So I think one thing that we need to do is again, work. And again, a lot of it is just interdisciplinary work between social studies, English, science, and math as far as it goes. So more interdisciplinary approach is another thing we need to do. But we need to be just harping this continually, because I feel it's going to be the biggest problem that our world is going to face.
Thank you, Bruce. Kate, what should our district do to prepare students to be global citizens?
Well, I guess you can look at that a few different ways. I'm probably a prime example of somebody who didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up and took the long route to get there. I think that encouraging set curriculums and set programs aren't exactly what we need to do. I think we need to offer more options, talking about career choices, talking about what kids want to be at an earlier age. So starting in early middle school, just planting the seed, starting to talk about what it means to grow up, to be an adult, the fact that not everyone needs to go to college, there's other options. And then as they get into high school, providing classes that might pique their interest. I know we do a great job right now, especially in the tech ed area, I think automotive area, with offering some courses so that kids can dabble in that and decide if that's something that they're interested in. I think expanding on the marketing and the sciences is something that is going to be really important. But overall, just kind of on a regular basis, talking to kids about what is your plan? What is your plan as you start to grow up? Not waiting until the last minute to determine what that is. And that's not just going to college. I mean, clearly I went to college and I didn't know what I wanted to be. And that was a struggle. And I think part of that was just not thinking about it sooner. So encouraging our students, from a young age to start thinking about what they want to be, and then encouraging that path is going to be really important. Offering those classes, again, is going to be the thing that I think helps set us apart from other districts, and allowing them to try different things and see what interests them and what doesn't.
Thank you. And Scott, what should school districts do to prepare students to be global citizens?
Yeah, first of all, Bruce, thanks a lot for the kind words about my daughter. One of the things that we've really tried to impress upon our kids, and I think this is important, and I think this is something that a school district can reinforce, is the general idea that decisions are made by people that show up at all levels, that they have to have a belief in their own ability to shape the world around them. And, so much of the time with the world in general now, things seem to be so big that it's easy to lose that. And I think starting at home, starting in your school, in your community, and focusing on that first is really the way to understand that, no, you really can make a difference. And that this is the way that you do that. Now, beyond that, I guess I would kind of, and forgive me if this seems like a little bit of a digression at first, I'll bring it around, I promise. My own college experience has a couple of things that I think are relevant to this. So first of all, I was a philosophy and political science major. I think I mentioned that. This is kind of the sort of majors that you have that get a lot of flack in a lot of cases for not having a direct connection to supposedly real world concerns. But somebody that I had I had a writer named David Foster Wallace, was my instructor for a couple of creative writing courses. I was standing in for another professor. And one of the things that Wallace wrote about in a graduation speech that he gave, and I'm boiling it way down here, but it was basically the idea of one of the benefits of a liberal arts education, or the main benefit of a liberal arts education, is not just what it teaches you, but that a liberal arts education, and which is to say the broader education, gives you the choice to decide what your frame of reference is going to be, and whether that's going to be bigger than just you, and whether it's going to incorporate a great deal of other areas that are outside of your own frame of reference. And I think that it really points out the benefits and importance of liberal arts education as part of a total curriculum.
Thank you. And thank you all for all of your responses. That actually wraps up the question portion of the forum. And we're now going to move on to the closing statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes, and like the opening statement, we will go in the order of ballot placement. So that means it will be Bruce, then Scott, and then Kate. So Bruce, if you'd like to go ahead with your closing statement.
Sorry. I would like to again thank the McFarland Federation of Teachers for putting on this candidate forum. I'd also like to thank my 2 opponents, Kate and Scott, for taking part as well. We need to have more people willing to engage in their civic responsibilities. My priorities are as follows. First, to keep our schools open safely as the pandemic hopefully begins to wind down. Secondly, we need to reduce teacher turnover and improve teacher morale. By giving teachers a greater voice and more freedom to be creative and collaborative with colleagues, we give them support and we empower them. The result of this is going to be a dynamic teacher-student interactions. Lastly, in this time of limited economic resources, we must find ways to strengthen and improve the relationship between our school district and our village by sharing facilities and services. At the same time, the district needs to encourage residents to volunteer as mentors and tutors in our schools. We must address that educational gap and the inequities in our schools so that all students can reach their full potential. It was a former student who encouraged me to run for the school board. I initially said no, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought it made sense to have someone on the board who actually has devoted his entire adult career to working with students as an educator in the classroom and as a coach. My 40 years of being an educator has been a rich and diverse experience. I taught in a rural district in upstate New York and in an inner city private school on the south side of Chicago. I taught 1 year in Scotland on a Fulbright teacher exchange, teaching Scottish kids about their own history. I spent part of a summer visiting Russian schools and staying with Russian teachers and comparing their education system with ours. I taught in McFarland from 1976 until 2015, teaching a range of classes from 7th grade through 12th grade. Since retiring, I've served on the Village Plan Commission, the Food Pantry Board, the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee. I know and I love this community. I also know what successful classrooms and smooth running, harmonious, that word harmonious, schools are like. I know I don't have all the answers, but my background and my educational experiences have given me lots of ideas. And I think I'm willing to try different crazy things sometimes. Working with the other members of the school board, I'm hoping to be a catalyst for change. Together, I think we can make the McFarland School District a model for what excellent public schools will look like in the future. I hope I can count on your support on April 6th. You can follow me on Facebook at Bruce Fisher for the McFarland School Board. And more than anything, remember, we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Scott, to you for your closing statement.
Thanks. So we actually, we didn't talk a lot about, directly about the decisions that were made during the pandemic. And so in my closing statement, I do feel that it's worth discussing these things because, I mean, frankly, this has been the pandemic and how to deal with returns to in-person schooling. It's been the most critical, but also incredibly difficult issue that any school board has faced over the last year. And I guess the reason that I initially decided to run for school board is that I was one of many people in McFarland who had deep concerns with the process and the decisions that the current school board took related to these issues. Now, on in-person, the decisions that the board made initially, I think would have had some very negative consequences if they would have been implemented. And I also think that they got there through some really questionable assumptions. Now, it's great that our worst fears have not been realized and that it's an unequivocal good, no caveats, full stop. But as a technology professional, I can also tell you that preparation and the decision-making process are at least as important in results. Just because we didn't get hacked today doesn't mean that our network is secure. Maybe we got lucky, maybe tomorrow we won't. And I think that we absolutely need to be confident in the board's decision-making And not only that we're going to end up in the right place and have good results, but the process that we're taking to get there. Now, it's to the board's great credit, and they are all great folks, good people, good neighbors, respect and like them. They did become more responsive to the concerns of a lot of families, and we're ending up in a place that is, I think, better for everybody. But I do feel that we could have been better prepared. We could have had much less conflict along the way if better decisions had been made from the start. The other reason that I'm really running, and this is it kind of goes with that, because the relation as a result of decisions made during the pandemic and during the return to in-person schooling, there was a lot of trust that needs to be reestablished with our teachers. And I really do think that I'm someone who's going to prioritize that. And I think I'm someone who can speak credibly to that and work with our teachers to get back there. As I've said, you'd be hard pressed to find a group of people who take more pride in their job, feel a greater connection to it than teachers. And they really are the lifeblood of our schools, which are the lifeblood of McFarland. To keep the high quality schools that are so important to us, we need to attract and retain the best teachers. And right now our teachers feel like they had legitimate concerns that were ignored. They feel scapegoated, and we need to counteract that. And it's something that I absolutely want to prioritize. And it's something that I think I can speak to credibly and work with the stakeholders to reach a better point on that.
Thank you, Scott. Kate, your closing statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to have me here. I think all of the candidates running for school board this year bring excellent qualifications to the table, and whomever wins, there will definitely be an added benefit to having them on the board. I would like to close by reiterating why I'm a good choice for our school board. As a parent with children throughout the school district, I'm able to see firsthand the benefits in our district, along with areas that may need improvement. I have a relationship with many families in the community, as well as teachers within the schools. I'm in touch with the needs of the community and will always make decisions based on the concerns of teachers, staff, family, and taxpayers. It's important to understand how the school is currently working while recognizing the needs of the staff and educators. By taking the time to listen to the students, community, educators in our district, as well as offer expertise in pediatric development, I can add a diverse perspective to the board that might be different from that of current board members. The school board needs to balance the professional directions and requirements of the district administration and staff against the interests of the taxpayers and parents of the district. I have always approached my professional endeavors with logic and facts, and would do so in an elected position on the school board. At the end of the day, my ultimate goal is to help make decisions for our school district that will impact students, their families, our educators and staff in the most positive way possible. This is an exceptional community. I want to see us repair some of the division that's occurred over the last year. What's right for one family may not be right for another, and I understand that. I hope that after today, I've proven to this community that I would be an asset on the board. Regardless of your choice for school board candidate in this election, I urge you to please vote on April 6th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, candidates. And thank you to everyone for attending today via live stream. Please remember the spring election is April 6th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., but you may begin to vote absentee by mail starting Thursday, March 18th. In-person absentee voting is Tuesday, March 30th through Friday, April 2nd. The village is strongly recommending and encouraging voters to exercise their right to receive an absentee ballot by mail. Visit myvote.wi.gov, the village website, or call the village administrative offices for more information. Thanks for being with us. Stay healthy and have a great day.